All right, our next speaker is Dr. Rebecca Edwards. She's a professor of history at the Rochester Institute of Technology. She has many research interests, including baseball history, baseball culture, deaf history, deaf culture, and oftentimes how the two intersect. She's going to be talking to us today about the science of baseball, the origin story of umpires' gestures, and this is a later version of a talk that she's given in the past at the Cooperstown Symposium on Baseball and American Culture that happens every year in early June. And I believe that she's presented several different times at that, and we hope that you enjoy this.
Work that I did present an early version of this at the Cooperstown Symposium, and now finally it has just been published. So it's in the Journal 9, and it just came out this week actually. So that's the full citation. So if this little mini version, you want to know more, this is where the full version is. So I got into this in part because I'm at RIT, and RIT, of course, as I'm sure everyone here knows, is home to a very large deaf population of students. And I teach the history of baseball at RIT. And invariably I have deaf students in that class, and they always say to me, do you know that a deaf player is the person who caused umpires to start gesturing behind home plate? And I always say, yes, I do know that. And they're a little bit always surprised because they expect me to argue with them. And they expect me to argue with them and disagree because that's what official baseball historians do. This is Bill Dean, who was the librarian at Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame Library Research Center, arguing as recently as 2012 in his most recent book, Baseball Myths, that the idea that a deaf baseball player, specifically William Dummy Hoy, somehow created the umpire signs for baseball is, as Dean says here, the Hoy myth. This is nothing but a myth. And his conclusion is, as you see here, the consensus is that standardized umpires' hand signals first appeared in the big leagues about 1906, give or take a year. Dummy Hoy, who last played in the majors in 1902, had nothing to do with them. I should add that this is an argument that Bill Dean has been making, oh my God, since like 1990. So I mean, he is just doubled down on this, and with this publication, I think quadrupled down on it in 2012. But I was here to argue that that is incorrect. Now, the person who usually gets the credit, as Dean was indicating, for having introduced umpires' gestures behind home plate is this man. This is Bill Clem. Clem was an umpire in the National League from 1905 to 1941. He's one of these pioneering umpires coming out of that era. He's inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1953. This is his Hall of Fame plaque for you here. He was the first umpire to be inducted into the Hall. So I mean, he's a legendary figure without question. And as you can see here, his plaque states in part, right, that he is credited with introducing arm signals indicating strikes and fair or foul balls. And that was part of the argument for his induction. Clem himself made this argument. I found this in an interview that he gave in Collier's magazine in 1951. Now, he was giving more interviews in that period because he was trying to burnish his case to get into the Hall, which was going to vote shortly, right, because he was inducted in 53. So he's trying to get out there and give more publicity. Remember me, please vote for me. And this really struck me when I found this. He tells this interviewer in Collier's, today when an umpire calls a strike, his right hand shoots above his head so that everybody in the ballpark knows it. If his hand remains at his side, it is a ball. I originated that system in 1906 when my voice went bad and I could no longer follow the custom of bellowing each decision. And I thought, wow, okay. This is the part where I think my presentation sort of dovetails with yours, because this is the part where you say to yourself, well, you've given me a year, son, so now all I have to do is scour every major available American newspaper from 1906 looking for proof, right? Well, if you did it, like someone must have written something somewhere, maybe. And at least I have a year, right? So you're not just, it's a big haystack, but it's not like all the haystacks that are possible. It's one enormous haystack. Well, it turns out there was an umpire in 1906 who voiced but bad and couldn't bellow and so used gestures. But surprise, surprise, it was not Bill Clem. It was this guy. This is Francis Silk O'Loughlin. If you're a Rochesterian going, why does that sound familiar? Yes, it's that Silk O'Loughlin. This is Silk O'Loughlin's up on the lake, of course. This is what actually happened. So Silk was also a legendary ump, tremendously well regarded. He was the ump on a three-man team. They only had 3 umps, believe it or not, for the World Series. Who was behind the plate here in Chicago in the World Series in 1906. Now the Chicago World Series here in 1906, this is a huge World Series of firsts, as I'm sure many of you here are aware. It is the first appearance in the World Series for both franchises. This would be the Cubs and the White Sox. This is your first all-L series, right? It's so to speak, it's an all-Chicago series. This is the first World Series appearance for the Cubs' famous infield of Tinker, Evers, and Chance. And it ends, of course, 1906 World Series in a ginormous upset where the heavily favored Cubs, with the best record in baseball of 116-36, were defeated by the White Sox, who were known, of course, as the hitless wonders. They had the worst team batting average in all of baseball, hitting only .230 in the regular season as a team. True to that, in the World Series, they batted only .198. How is it possible? And yet they won. It is also the first hitless wonders World Series in which, due to this, as you can see, this is a shot of Game 5. Due to this, where the umpires gestured behind home plate for the first time. This is the first World Series in which that happens. Because nobody could make themselves heard, right? It's an all-Chicago series, so everyone there is rooting for everybody there, right? Everyone there is rooting for everybody. So no one could make themselves heard. It is the Chicago Tribune which breaks the story here. This is actually from a clipping in January after the series had ended, where they write here, fans who were fortunate enough to see the World Series in this city last fall will recall the din of rooting was so great it was impossible to hear an umpire's decision. Umpire Johnstone, that is Jim Johnstone, in case anyone was wondering, who worked behind the plate in the first game, had difficulty in making even the batteries, that is the batters, understand his decisions. Next day, Silk O'Loughlin supplemented his clarion voice with his characteristic gestures, and his decisions were apparent to all. Before the third game, both umpires were instructed to raise their right arms for strikes and their left arm for balls. There are multiple things in here that are fascinating. Since I have only a little time, I won't go into all of them. The one I want to draw your attention to is the one I highlighted in bold. The Chicago Tribune's description of these gestures as characteristic. Okay, hello. So now it seems to me like we back up from in the World Series under this crush of the crowds and the pressure, somebody like suddenly went, wow, we gotta do something. No, because it didn't occur to Jim Johnston to do something, right? It occurred to Silk, but it only occurred to Silk because in fact apparently he'd been doing it for a while because the Tribune went, well that's how he called the game, right? Those are his characteristic gestures. Well, when did that happen? I thought to myself, well it turns out it happened in 1906 with a coincidence that is way too big in my mind to actually be a coincidence when the Washington Post reported in April. This is the very beginning of the season. This was the opening here. O'Loughlin sprained his larynx Tuesday and had no voice today. Instead of calling the decisions, he employed Dummy Hoy's mute signal code, which was certainly a novelty for Silk. I will admit I found this at the U of R, speaking of doing research in libraries, in a database, and endlessly reading old newspaper clippings in my big haystack of 1906 and hoping I'd find something. I'd been there for days. at this point, coming, and then found nothing. When I found this, it did take literally everything I had not to jump up and start screaming up and down in Rushby's library, but I managed not to do it because that would have been really embarrassing. I did actually, though, spike my pen on the desk, and then everybody stared, and I thought, well, that was embarrassing enough, so I won't do any more. Yeah, but this is the post in April. And not only do they record, right, that he did this, they give the credit to Dummy Hoy. The sports writer who was on the scene knew exactly what that was, that Sook O'Loughlin had suddenly imported to his own use. And this makes complete sense because, of course, Sook O'Loughlin was already an ump when Dummy Hoy was playing. So he would have seen the system that Dummy Hoy had brought in. Now, at that time, that system was here, as the Chicago Tribune tells us. That when Dummy Hoy was playing in the big leagues, his only method of ascertaining decisions on pitched balls was by watching the coach at third base, right? Because umps weren't doing it, and he was getting killed trying to turn to get a sense of the ump to ask him, like, was that a ball, was that a strike? And he's not focused on the next pitch. So what they did was the coach would stand at third, and he would raise an arm if it was a ball or a strike to let him know what that pitch was. And then he'd just quick look back and wait to get set for the next one. So this is now two newspapers who are confirming the same thing, right? The Washington Post is saying, well, Silk is using Dummy Hoy's system. The Chicago Tribune, which is saying, this is fast forward, right? This is coverage after the World Series, saying, okay, so there was Silk in the World Series using these gestures. They were characteristic of him, but they weren't really his. They were Dummy Hoy's, and he had borrowed them for himself. That is therefore the man who started it all, as the deaf community has been arguing all along. That is Dummy Hoy. That is William Dummy Hoy here. Hoy had come into baseball in 1888. He played initially in the National League for the Washington Senators, first in war, first in peace, last in the National League. He then jumped to the Players League in 1890, playing for the Buffalo Bisons. Jumped again to the American Association in 1891, always seeking a better contract, playing for the St. Louis Browns, and came back finally after the association collapsed into the National League in 1892. Back with the Senators, then with the Reds, where he spent most of his career, and then a year in Louisville before jumping to the American League to play with the Chicago, actually with the White Sox in their inaugural year. He will end his season in the Pacific Coast League, playing with the Los Angeles Lulus, and he finally retires from there in 1903. That is his career, and you can see here at the end, at the age of 41 in 1903, playing in LA, he's still a pretty productive player here. I mean, you take that at 41. I take that. That's pretty good. Also, I believe he's the only player to have played in every 19th century league. National Players, American Association, and then American League. So Winnebarba, Dummy Hoy, played for everybody. That's him again. So why did we lose track of the truth? Right? And that was my next question. Okay, if we had the story right, well then how come now when the deaf people say, Dummy Hoy is the one who did that, everybody goes, no, he wasn't. So I think I have a couple of theories as to that. One is find a grave. This image is taken off of there. Helps us to find Sook O'Loughlin's grave. And Sook O'Loughlin, as you can see here, he's buried here in Rochester. He's buried at Holy Sepulchre because Sook O'Loughlin, like Bill Clem, was a Rochesterian. So there's a strong Rochester connection to this story. And O'Loughlin is buried here. He's a youngish guy. 1918, he is actually one of the victims of the influenza outbreak in 1918. So he is dead. This is from an obituary, again from the Tribune. The Rules Committee of the game passed up the gesture idea. They brought it after the 1906 World Series and said, why don't we do this all the time? And they took it up and then rejected it. That's what the Tribune is referring to here. The Rules Committee passes on the idea. Many baseball followers were urging the adoption of such a system, and they declined. But O'Loughlin continued his methods with improvements, so I think he just kept gesturing out there as an ump. So they knew that in 1918, in other words. They still knew they were working on gesture system, and O'Loughlin was correctly the umpire most associated with that. Even in 1943, we still have the story straight. This is the Lewiston Morning Tribune saying, as the hall is making it possible for umps to be considered, sports writers start writing things to go, oh, are there really any umps that should be in the Hall of Fame? And of course, a lot of snarky sports writers are like, no. But then others are like, well, sure, there have to be some greats. And this sports writer was actually advocating for Silk. If you're going to put anybody in the hall, it should be Silk O'Loughlin. Why? Because did not Silk O'Loughlin originate the custom of raising the right arm to indicate a strike? Yes, I said to myself, yes. Yes, he did. So we knew that in 1943. And of course, some people knew this the entire time, too, giving credit where credit is due, and that would be the deaf community, where Dummy Boy is revered as a hero still. If there's one deaf figure deaf people know still today, it's a ball player who most hearing people can't remember, right? Which also shows you the difference of memory, cultural memory, between the two communities. This is a painting by a deaf painter named Nancy Rourke drawing this of Dummy Hoy. And Hoy himself was a great advocate for his community, for his people, for the deaf community. And as you can see here, quoting the Democrat Chronicle in 1902, talked about how being a deaf player in baseball was a help to him, that his deafness was an advantage as a player, because he had to pay more attention. He had to look with his eyes, and he couldn't just get by on trying to hear in a ballpark. Now, the deaf community has had some progress with getting Hoy recognized. So he has been inducted here into the Cincinnati Hall of Fame. I told you he played longest for the Reds, and they have inducted him into their hall. This is the signage at Hoy Field, Gallaudet University's baseball field. Gallaudet is a university for deaf people, and they recently renamed the baseball field in Hoy's honor. And they go right to it, right? Invented the signs for strike and ball because deaf people have always known that this was true. It's the hearing people who lost track of the story sometime after 1943 is what I'm going to say, since that's the last date I have from a newspaper clipping. So the question, I think, is why did both the communities diverge, right? Where deaf people held on to the story and hearing people abandoned the story. I think some of it has to do with Clem. I think because Silk O'Loughlin had died in 1918, right? He was not there to continue to speak for himself and say, wait a second, that was me. And Clem, in burnishing his reputation for the hall, took his friend's story, and those details match way too much to be a sheer coincidence, and borrowed it. I'm not saying Clem doesn't deserve to be in the hall. He totally deserves to be in the hall. He's a great umpire. It's just that he doesn't deserve credit for stuff he didn't do. And he borrowed his friend's story. His friend wasn't there to contradict him. And it was a long time ago, admittedly. I'm not holding it against sports writers in 1953, right? 1918 was a long time prior. And they didn't know either, right? And Dummy Hoy himself didn't give a lot of interviews with hearing sports writers, because hearing sports writers wasn't about Hoy. It was about they weren't comfortable interviewing a deaf guy because they didn't know how to interact with him. So deaf people talked to him and they knew the truth, but hearing people increasingly didn't, and they didn't know. And Clem filled that vacuum, I think. And what we used to know, we didn't know, and that memory was lost, and a new story took its place. And I'm hoping with this work to restore the truth of what happened, and give credit where it's due, which would be to Dummy Hoy and Silk O'Loughlin. Thanks. Whoa, that's a question over now, right? Your hand went up first, I'll get to you.
So how does the hall treat situations like this where they have something that's historically inaccurate, technically, on a plaque? Do they,
I have no idea.
you know?
Nope. Maybe, I'm hoping we get a chance to find out.
Yeah, there's no precedence for modifying the information on a plaque. The only thing on plaques that have ever changed is names, like Roberto Clemente, due to Hispanic culture with the father's and mother's name being reversed. They've changed plaques for that reason. but they haven't ever changed factual information.
I remember though, they just changed Robinson's plaque. Because Jackie Brown was just at the hall last year, and if I remember correctly, the original Robinson plaque spoke only of his record in baseball, like the stats, the facts, the figures. But the new plaque includes the stats, the figures, everything it had, but then adds that he had integrated baseball, which the original plaque hadn't actually mentioned. So they did just make that. Now that's not changing the information, but it is deepening the historical information on the plaque. So there is an updated plaque of his. I don't actually know when that happened, but I only know because I was at the hall last year and I went, wait a second, this isn't the plaque I had read. It's nicer, but it's different.
Thank you.
You gotta hand it on to.
Why does Bill Dean continue to hang on to, what's his doc?
Can I say, I don't know Bill Dean. That's the last time I presented this, people were like, you're so mean to him. I was like, I don't know the man. I don't even know what he looks like. He's an author, and so I read what he writes. I mean, I've never met. We have never laid eyes on each other. I don't know.
He has no accounts to, I mean, back at our, first account.
No, he doesn't. He argues that he has argued, again, since the 90s, he has just argued that this is a total myth, that deaf people, he's even called it in print an inaccuracy, that deaf people are spreading inaccurate information. He sort of hand-slapped a couple of, deaf activists and said, it's our job here in the hall to strive for accuracy. You people are just inaccurate. We can't have that. And I thought, I thought, dude, what is your beef with it? That seems a little bit much. Because he doesn't have any,
John?
I don't think so.
No.
But he also doesn't have any proof.
No.
I mean, I have been through Clem's Hall of Fame file, because everybody says it was Clem, it was Clem. So I thought, I looked for clippings online and databases, but then I went to the hall and said, give me they have a huge file on Clem, and everybody who's in the Hall of Fame, right? I thought, well, there has to be something in this, if everyone's clinging to this idea so much. Let me tell you, there's nothing in there. Bill Clem is really known for a very famous gesture, that is true, but it is not gesturing behind home plate. His big famous gesture is, he used to make a line in the sand, famous Clem line in the sand with his foot. And then he would, ball players were starting to act out about a call, he would make a line. Boys, you cross this line, you're out of here. And then when they would lean in and go, they'd step over the line, he would eject them from the game. That has huge coverage, that is everywhere, that is the most famous Bill Clem gesture, no question, the foot gesture. I cannot find any record of any other gesturing, so there's that problem in the file. There is a record of a throat injury. He did suffer a major throat injury, except it was in the off season. He was doing a little sideline work and some off-season umpiring, and took a ball in the throat. And there was concern that he wouldn't be able to come back in the regular season and call, but he had throat surgery in the off-season. By the time he came back, he was able to call a game. And that was much later too. That was, I want to say 1915-ish.
When did you unearth your nuggets, the 2 articles? What year?
I unearthed the Washington Post 1906 bid from April, and then the Chicago Tribune stuff that followed from 1907. That I found over the course of the entire summer in 2010. No, it wasn't the summer before. It was 2009. That was literally the whole summer. That my summer was spent then. Good times. Then I presented those 2 things in particular, at Cooperstown, which Ryan was talking about, in 2010. Which I did in order to see if people were going to think, well, is that enough proof? To me, I thought, okay, that seems like good proof, but you want to talk to your fellows and say, is it really? And I got a lot of support for that. But then everybody went, well, then how come we don't know? And why didn't we forget it? Da, 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 da. And all these other questions. And I went, oh, I don't know. I just had these two things to talk
Have you
about.
tried to reach out to Bill Dane?
I have not, although this just went public. So this article just got published this week.
Make a copy of it, send it to him.
Yeah.
And then copy the two articles.
I'm really afraid to do that. I'm hoping someone else just says, Bill, like some friend goes, Bill, have you seen this? Curious this? Funny this? Well, because it was after that his book came out, the 2012 book, that then I went, okay, so he really is like going down with this ship, right? And I thought, I'm just going to have to write this and publish it. Let the chips fall where they may. And keep reminding people, I don't know the man, I've never met the man. I'm not out to get Bill Dean. He's just he's just wrong on this one. He hasn't done any real work on this. That's all. Finding the Lewiston Tribune thing about silk, that was a whole other summer spent. Totally worth it for them.
Make sure that he gets a copy.
Okay. Thank you. I will try to do that. And thank you all very much.